So Claire, something that people may not know about me is that I am an absolute sucker for agony aunt style content.
Yep.
I love a letter writer column. I love nosing in on what people's problems are or what their perceived problems are. And I love to see the responses that are given by generations of writers all over the planet. And so when I saw that Graham Norton and his very good friend in the industry, Maria McElwain, had a podcast in this ilk, I was absolutely thrilled and I was not disappointed.
Dear Graham and Maria, I've been happily married for 30 years. Well done. But my wife, I know I'm going to start to laugh now, but my wife has just started to smell. Is she dead? I've been monitoring her showers.
Who's going to tell him?
Us. I think it has to be.
It's over.
They are so good and they are so funny and they are so real with people. Again, these perceived problems, they are so, so funny. It's very entertaining to listen to.
The Brits do advice columns so well, and there are fantastic columns in various British newspapers. The Americans do it well too, but the British ones are funny as opposed to the American ones, which tend to be very earnest, aren't they?
Yes. The Americans, very earnest. The Brits, that stiff upper lip kind of culture, definitely comes through in this type of content, I think. But also then you layer on top of that Graham Norton, who in my mind can do absolutely no wrong. He manages to be the most entertaining, the most compelling person in any room that he's in. And he is in rooms with the biggest celebrities on the planet on a weekly basis on his TV show. And yet he has his own gravitational force. And then when he brings the friendship that he has with Maria McElwain, forged over decades in the industry together, it is just podcast magic.
Have you got any problems you would like them to solve?
Sure, yes. I don't know if they've got time on their podcast to solve my problems, but what I wrote in my review of this podcast was that as much as I love agony aunt style content, for me, the downfall of it is that I never actually get to know if these people implemented the advice that they were given, if they even heard it. It's like that friend that everybody has in the group chat that asks for advice and then completely ignores it and does the opposite of what you suggest that they do. I want to know. I want to know if what these people are told maybe is the best course of action, if it actually happens, and if it works, if it turns out as they hoped it would.
I sometimes wonder if the questions are real. Do you get the sense that these questions are from real human beings?
I think it could go either way. Some of them are so far-fetched that you have to wonder if somebody invented them. But also, would somebody dream up some of this kind of stuff? I don't know. Maybe to get the ball rolling, there were some staff members who were asked to ghostwrite some questions. But I like to think, again, being nosy, I like to think this is what's going on in people's lives.
We're here to talk about your summer listening recommendations as our in-house podcast expert, and I love the fact that one of them has got a water slide in it.
I was so pleasantly surprised by this podcast. It's called Slippery Slope. It's hosted by the Australian comedians Brad Oakes and Dave O'Neill, and they first heard about this story on a work trip. They were doing gigs in Mount Isa, in the Queensland mining town of Mount Isa. They heard about Mount Isa's missing water slide. And it starts as a satirical kind of true crime investigation into what happened to this water slide. And I don't want to spoil for anybody what that was, but it involves pirates, it involves the Suez Canal, it involves larceny at sea, and it involves COVID, water slide builders. It has everything.
Oh.
And it actually evolves into this really nice look at Australian culture, at small communities, regional towns, about what makes a community, what people will rally around. And the really nice thing about it is that the comedians who host it are at pains to say through the course of these episodes that they are not journalists. But these are really great scripts. They've actually done some really good, interesting interviews. They're funny, but they're also not poking fun at people who live in small towns who a missing water slide might be a big issue for. So it's a really fun listen, and especially in summer, there's a small town rivalry involved here with one of the other towns up the road who already has a water slide. So it's really fun to listen to over summer, I think, with your family in the car if you're driving somewhere.
You grew up in the New South Wales Central West country town of Coonabarabran. Was
Yes.
there a water slide?
There was a water slide at a little theme park that we had called Miniland, which was dinosaur themed. There was one, and the pool was the main event, even though there was 30-foot high dinosaur replicas around the place. There was a water slide there, and it was absolutely the main event of Miniland. It was always my great dream to purchase Miniland and run it as an adult, but unfortunately it is no longer there. Maybe one day.
I grew up in Canberra where there was no water slide at all, but there was a tower to jump off or be pushed off, which felt to me like it was 300 metres high.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was at a height that would no longer be approved by any council, and it has now been taken down after various people broke ankles and necks and whatever falling off it or jumping off it. I remember vividly getting halfway up the stairs and then having to go back down in shame while my brother and his friends tormented me.
Yeah.
It's but in towns like that, inland towns, the pool and water are so important in summer, aren't they?
Oh, so important. That's where everybody congregates. And that has just reminded me about another feature of Miniland, which was one of those really big slides. Again, absolutely would not get anywhere near an approval in this day and age because it was just metal, about 10 to 15 metres high, sitting in the baking hot sun for hours on end, and all you got was this hessian sack to sit on and slide down, and you'd come out the other end with third-degree burns and go, great, let's go again. That was
Your
the
mum
best.
would say, stop complaining.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the fact that you honoured the writing in that podcast. We work a lot on long-form narrative podcasts, and it's brought a kind of journalistic writing to audiences that perhaps would never click on a feature article or go and buy a magazine with really long, multi-thousand-word pieces of writing. And these long-form podcasts are really long. They're like multiple books, aren't they?
They are, and what I wrote in my review of Slippery Slope is that the best podcasts like this are like keyhole surgery. All the work, the intricate, detailed work happens on the inside. You can't really see it at the end of the day, besides maybe a little scar on the top. And that is what this podcast is, despite the fact that these comedians don't want anybody to think that they are journalists. They've actually done a better job, in my opinion, than some journalists have done in pulling an expansive story together, an informative story at the end of the day, in a really entertaining way. And so what I said is that maybe the better way to explain it is to say that it is all killer, no filler. They've taken out the ums and the ahs, they've taken out the long rambling conversations, and what's left is a really entertaining, informative show.
A lot of these long-form podcasts are, of course, based around much more serious topics like murder. We've produced several of them ourselves. Your podcast of the year recommendation is a little bit like this, and it comes from Canada's public broadcaster. Tell me about that.
That series is called Sea of Lies, and I'm not unique in recommending it as the podcast of the year. It has appeared on, I think, every best podcast list that I've seen published to date, and absolutely justifiably so. It is a true crime investigation. It's hosted by a writer, journalist, podcaster, TV writer named Sam Mullins. He's Canadian, and there's research and reporting done by Alex Gatenby. It tells the story of a 1990s Canadian swindler who at one point was one of the most wanted people in Canada or on the planet. He was involved in identity theft, fraud, and even murder, we learn at the outset of this series. But what was really amazing and compelling about this series is that as much as it is a serious, heartbreaking story, it doesn't feel exploitative of the subjects, and there are even moments of humour that are definitely woven in there by Sam Mullins and by his colleagues.
One of the challenges with telling stories about murder in this format is that you have to walk a very fine line between journalism and entertainment. We know that people consume long-form podcasts as a form of entertainment. It's like reading a book or watching a movie. But they have high expectations of the gravitas and seriousness with which you're going to treat the subject matter. A lot of people don't get that right. How did you feel they managed that?
I thought it was really sensitively done. I think in the bad old days at the outset of podcasting, when people realised that there was such a hunger for these types of stories, victims were not generally the centre of those stories. They were written quite salaciously in order to get the most ears or eyes on whatever the story was that they were telling. This story, Sea of Lies, starts with an unknown person being pulled from the water off the coast of the UK. And what it kind of does over the course, and it's not a long series either, it's only about 6 or 8 episodes. And what it does over the course of that series is to give this person who at the time didn't have a name for a lot of the story, it gives him his identity back. It finds out the kind of life that he lived. It determines how he came to die in this quite sad, lonely manner. And so I think bringing victims back to the centre of these stories, giving them something, and teaching us something about ourselves in the process is how the medium has evolved over a couple of decades now.
Chrissy, you and I work together on our daily podcast, The Front, and on lots of our long-form podcasts, including one that is definitely my podcast of the year. It's Sick to Death by Hedley Thomas, which you were the producer on, and we've both worked on very closely. All day, every day, we're often debating ideas and stories, and something that we have never quite agreed on, and you've been very diplomatic about this, is that I can't stand Meghan Markle, and I think you were much more generous towards Meghan. You're closer in age to her than I am, and you were very charitable and kind, and I had a moment of just exquisite triumph this year when you listened to her podcast, I think against your will, and decided that you do also think she's a bit of a pain.
Yeah, I don't. And I wrote this in my review of her podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder, that I don't have strong feelings either way. I am Meghan Markle agnostic, I think you could say. But I listened to her podcast, which is tied to the launch of her business as ever. People have probably seen the Netflix documentary about that by now. And so I thought, this could be interesting. I am interested in hearing from women who've started businesses and who've, in all different fields and that kind of thing. And almost from the outset, I couldn't figure out the point of it. It was somehow all about her and yet nothing to do with her. And I didn't ever buy that she is having the same experience as a multi-millionaire who is quite literally royalty, as somebody who's sitting in their garage selling things on Etsy. I just couldn't buy it. I couldn't follow that line. As much as I was prepared to give her the benefit of the doubt, it just didn't come across as authentic to me. But what I did enjoy was hearing those stories, was learning about some of these founders, some more than others. And I definitely believe that those women deserve that platform. And I wish them all the best. I just wish that they had more of an opportunity to shine through that podcast.
That's one of the issues that I have with Meghan Markle. Look, I don't actually dislike her. I think she's probably a very nice person. Yeah. But her, I think, content is absolutely insufferable. And one of the problems I have with it is that she attracts, because she's a duchess, just ask her, pretty great guests, really impressive people. In her cooking show, With Love Meghan on Netflix, which is now being cancelled, she is able to get celebrity chefs and very inspiring kind of the guy who founded the World Food Kitchen, really impressive people. And then she shows them how to make croissants or something. It's like, learn from these people. Let them tell their stories. Why are you showing them how to decant peanut butter pretzels into a plastic bag?
Yeah.
And I haven't listened to the podcast, mainly because I just don't have time. But it's the same thing. You've got people on there like Whitney Wolfe Herd, impressive businesswomen. Listen to them.
Yes, listen to them. And she is an extremely fascinating character, Whitney Wolfe Herd. I did find some of the points that she made again, a little bit difficult. And I thought it was an interesting choice to have that be the first episode of this new podcast series, because Whitney Wolfe Herd, famously one of the founders of Tinder, then left that company and started Bumble, which is another dating app. That was predicated on the idea that women should be able to make the first move because men had, by and large, shown that they could not be trusted on dating apps to be normal. And that was a revolutionary idea at the time. She was also only in her 20s, I think, when she did that. But she got onto this podcast with Meghan Markle, and they appeared to have quite a close friendship. And then kind of insinuated in my interpretation of the conversation that actually women are being treated badly in dating because they don't love themselves enough.
It's our fault again.
Yeah, exactly. It is the fault of the women who have been put through the ringer by the dating apps that she and people around her created. So that was a little bit hard to buy, and that's probably where I kind of went, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be, and it's also not for me.
Kristen, I'll be listening to those over summer, and I look forward to us getting back together after our holidays.
Getting the band back together.
Thank you.